All right. Today, I'm super excited to welcome my dear friend and writing buddy and sober sexpert, Tawny, to the podcast. How's it going, friend?
Hello, my love. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm super excited about this conversation. And mostly it's the same conversation we've had before. I'm excited to share this conversation with other people because we chat back and forth quite a bit, and you are such an amazing resource and voice in the sober community, but specifically the sober sex community. And so I'm excited to share this topic with my audience today because what a more daunting combination of things. The only thing that could make that more scary is like sober sex, public speaking, and
Yeah,
all of those things together. So I'd love to know before we get started, how did you become a sober sexpert, my friend?
this is a great question, Amanda. Um, I mean the nickname came from Ruby Warrington. She, if listeners aren't familiar with Ruby's work, she created the term sober curious and just I think just completely changed the landscape and paved the way for the work you and I do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ruby and I did an event a couple years ago where she interviewed me and we talked about sober sex. And she introduced me as a sober sexpert. And I thought it was like kind of cheeky and fun. So I just kind of latched onto it. And that's where the nickname came from. But I got into this conversation when I was, early in sobriety. I quit drinking November of 2015, and just the thought of dating, let alone having sex without alcohol, scared the hell out of me. So that's how I got into this. Is like I'm a journalist. I
Mm-hmm.
like to do like experiential journalism where I do stuff and then I write about it. So I I've started writing about recovery, writing about sobriety and dating and those intersections. And here we are almost 7 years later, and I'm the
Yeah.
sober sexpert.
Do you remember the first sober sexual or sober dating experience that you decided to write about?
I mean, I don't write about graphic detail or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the anxiety of getting to know yourself without alcohol, asking for
Mm-hmm.
what you want in bed without alcohol. Um, yeah, it's something that I'm still learning. Like I'm learning as I go. Like I know like the internet calls me the sober sexpert, but I am not an official expert. I'm just a journalist.
No one is an
No,
official expert. That's the thing. There's
yes,
always
true.
something to learn. And I think two of actually the most powerful sober or most powerful personal development tools, that's a tongue twister, are sobriety and sex. They are both
Mm-hmm.
places where your shadow and all of the discomfort and all of your anxiety does come up. These are two very, very vulnerable places. And so the intersection of these two things is so important to talk about. So I would love to actually hear your background in both of these realms. So, can you take us way back to why in the first place you decided to quit drinking? What was it for you that kind of moved this decision forward?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because I think this is a good chance to remind people you don't have to hit rock bottom to decide to stop drinking. And I know that that is what so much of your work is about. Um, I I was a party girl bartender for 10 plus years, and I I grew up in Texas. I'm in New York City now. But my time in Texas, I was partying a lot. Now I understand I was self-medicating depression and anxiety, and it's textbook stuff, you know. Um, but once I moved to New York because I wanted to focus on my writing. And that was really the time that I met people outside of the bar scene for the first time. I connected with people in writing classes and developed organic relationships with other people that had nothing to do with alcohol. And then if we would have a drink, I was the weirdo because I took it too far. Everyone I was hanging out with would have like a glass of wine, maybe didn't even finish it, and I'm like ordering shots and I'm on my third drink. And so that was really the first time I I looked at myself. I saw the reflection of myself of like, oh, they think I drink too much. Maybe I do. So, it kind of, a seed was definitely planted. So my quote rock bottom moment, which was not a rock bottom, but it was the moment that I decided to stop, was I was at a pub with some of these friends, and I realized that I had just spent 4 hours in that pub talking about how I don't have enough time to write. And my friends are talking about how they don't have time to audition. They don't have time to, we all moved to New York for a reason. And we're sitting in
Mhm.
a pub talking about how we don't have time to do it. So it just clicked. Like on that walk home from the pub, I realized I just spent 4 hours talking about how I don't have time to write.
Mm.
Maybe there's a connection here. So, the next day I woke up and I was like, not drinking for a week, not drinking for 2 weeks, not drinking for a month. Then my 30th birthday comes up and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to drink for a full year. I'm going to write a blog. I'm going to start a blog and I'm going to write about it. So the two really, the alcohol, like giving up alcohol and then writing about giving up alcohol,
Mhm.
were like holding me accountable for each other. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and it was just a year-long social experiment of my 30th year without booze. And spoiler alert, November of 2022, it'll be 7 years. So
Yes. Oh my gosh. I am celebrating this journey for you and for anyone, I mean, who picks this, because here's what I heard you just say is that you had a dream on your heart. You had something that you were intended to do, and you
Mhm.
realized you didn't have, number one, the time. But I bet behind that, I usually go for three factors: time, energy, and confidence. If you are spending a lot of your time drinking and partying and recovering from alcohol, you've gotten time and energy out the door. Those two things aren't available to you. And your confidence, if you're not doing the thing that you want to do, you are never flexing that muscle enough to gain the confidence to know that you're capable of it. And now I would love for you to just brag on yourself for a second and tell us some of the places where your writing has been published and some of the places where it will be published in the future.
Sure. I happily will brag about myself.
Yes.
I'm a freelance writer. Like, it started as a blog and then turned into freelancing. So I've been published in Playboy, Men's Health, Huffington Post. I write for a couple of recovery blogs, but those are the big names.
Yeah.
And working on a book that, you and I have been internet friends for a while, but like the fact that we got our book deals at the same time
Mm-hmm.
and our books come out around the same time, so we've gotten even closer, and so that's been
Yes.
really cool to share that together.
Yes. And I mean, anyone who wants to write, most often their dream at some point is to write a book or snag a big publication. And so, I mean, Playboy, Men's Health, those are big, big, big publications. So just to have articles published in those entities is amazing.
Yeah.
But then also, what is the writer's dream but to have a book deal, right? And so I just want to celebrate and hold like some space to honor that you did it. And it surely, yes, you might have come to this place regardless of your decision to quit drinking, but I can guarantee you, and I would, uh, I would love to hear how you feel. If you would have gotten there, do you think you would have gotten there? And how long do you think it would have taken you to get there if you would have chosen to keep up your kind of boozy party girl lifestyle?
I mean, honestly, I don't know that I would have quit drinking if I didn't leave Texas. If I didn't leave my hometown where I spent 20 years in Texas. Like, I was born in Northern California, but grew up in Waco, Texas. And
Mm-hmm.
um, all I knew was bartending and partying. Like, all of my friends were bartenders and fellow party girls. And so like we would take like a month off of alcohol here and there, just
Mm-hmm.
to prove to ourselves that we could do it. And then we would celebrate with shots. Um, but I don't know that I would have gotten sober. I don't know that I would be even alive, let alone a published author, to
Yeah.
be completely honest. Like, I put myself in a lot of really scary, questionable positions that I would never do today without without alcohol. I mean, it just, and it was self-medicating undiagnosed depression and anxiety.
Mhm.
Like I can look back and very clearly see that that's what I had and have. Now I just have healthier coping skills. The
Mhm.
anxiety is still there. She's still going strong. I just know how to deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah, totally. And these are, I mean, it's so confusing too, because you're drinking during a time where that was a rite of passage, right? That was what
Yes.
was expected and socially acceptable for you to do. And so it's really hard sometimes to separate the two of, okay, there's some underlying stuff going on. Um, but isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing? So it's like, yes, you're self-medicating, but then you're also just participating in this activity that you're told is acceptable and expected at this point in your life. So how confusing and how amazing for you to question it and have this moment of clarity of, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to
Well,
be
and
doing something else.
Amanda, I think this is why I connect with your work so much, because just the title Unbottled Potential in general
Mm-hmm.
is that's exactly what it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the work you do like destigmatizes the whole like you have to lose everything to stop drinking or
Yeah.
even question your relationship with
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. Like I I got sober in the end of 2015. This is before Sober Curious. This is before all the recovery blogs and all the recovery podcasts. It was AA or nothing.
Yep.
So now that we have people like you and Ruby and talking about you don't have to give up forever. You can just acknowledge that alcohol is an issue in your life right now. And like that nuance, I think, is so incredible.
Yeah, so
Like
much.
it is so important. So I'm just trying to celebrate you right now.
Yes. Well, and it's so, as you were telling your story, and I'm remembering these little pieces of my story as they overlap, because you wouldn't have gotten sober if you didn't leave Texas. I wouldn't have gotten sober had I not come to Texas. I
Yes,
don't
there it
think
is.
so. So I came to Texas in 2015, the year you were quitting drinking, with the intention to change my life, the intention to live this healthier kind of spiritual lifestyle. And it didn't happen right away because I didn't quite yet have the tools to do that. I thought that it would just kind of click into place. You move and then you get to become a different person. Well, the problem is that you're still the same person until you choose to become a different person.
Mm,
And much like you, though, I've always wanted to be a writer. I've known since I was a little girl, and that creative juice wasn't even flowing, when I was drinking. So yeah, I could write, but it wasn't as connected as the writing that I do now. And um so living up to our potential, but then also stepping into these different areas of our lives where being vulnerable and being connected are so important. And so dating and relationships were both important parts of that for us. And so I would love to know, so we talked about how you got to this piece of your decision to quit drinking. So then the next thing is you have to keep living your life. You have to keep going out there and putting yourself out there and forming
yeah.
friendships and relationships. So what was it like for you in those early discovery days? Tell us your journey into exploring your sexuality and everything else that's come from that in sobriety. I'll just kind of let you free flow whatever comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part of dating and sobriety is taking time to date yourself and get to know who you are. In the AA world, they recommend staying away from alcohol, obviously.
Definitely premise there.
They definitely recommend that. But staying away from dating and sex in that first year for the same reason. Like I'm not saying anything revolutionary here. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a reframe. Um because when you quit drinking or cut back or whatever you're doing, you're meeting yourself in a whole new light. If alcohol was your security blanket when you felt uncomfortable on a date, you've got to figure out how to go on a first date from scratch. If alcohol was your salve before you ask your partner to try something new in bed, you've got to communicate. You got to actually
Mm-hmm.
talk about this stuff. So, of course, it's going to be way more beneficial if you can spend some time alone figuring out who you are and what you want without alcohol. So, talking about sexuality, you know me, I am like the biggest advocate for masturbation, especially for women, learning your body and getting in touch with your body and mind, connecting your body and mind. And, we know, you and I know that alcohol actually makes sex not, it numbs you,
Yeah.
right?
All the parts of you, all
It
of them.
numbs all of the parts of you. So if you're taking a shot to feel a little bit more adventurous in bed, you're not just turning off that anxiety, you are literally numbing your senses. So sex is not going to be as pleasurable for you. So if you've only had sex under the influence, even after one or two drinks, you're you're in for a whole new experience. So, I mean, I think the most important thing, regardless, is spending some time alone. And then, and yeah, so that is where the sexuality comes in. When you, like, I think for me, the biggest thing was learning what I like sexually versus what I thought I was supposed to like sexually.
Yes.
As a woman, as a party girl, as someone whose sex life was largely performative. Like, don't get me wrong, I had fun, but there was definitely a performative element to it of trying to impress whoever I was sleeping with and fake orgasms and put on a show, and then once I removed alcohol from the equation, I didn't want to put on the show anymore. I wanted to actually figure out what I liked. And that's the journey.
So what are so, you already talked about one really important step is dating yourself, feeling yourself, if you will, self-pleasure.
Literally.
Yes. So what are some other components of making creating a runway to make yourself more comfortable with this really vulnerable experience and conversation, completely undiluted?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, something that I did was I spent a lot of time like nurturing hobbies, nurturing my existing friendships. And I think leaning into those, you'll learn a lot that you can carry into your dating life, where in early sobriety, I took a lot of classes, and I had extra money because I wasn't drinking, and I had extra time because I wasn't drinking. So I was taking writing classes and studying Spanish and doing all of these things, but meeting people genuinely, like meeting people, we had an organic connection because we're both studying Spanish, we're both writing, whatever. So those are ways to form authentic connections with people, whether those turn into dates or not. You're still learning how to put yourself out there, and you're still learning how to connect and be vulnerable. Like taking a Spanish class, that's vulnerable. You have to you're going to fuck up a lot when you're practicing Spanish. In a writing class, you're going to read your work out loud, subject to criticism, subject to feedback, which is all part of it. So you're giving yourself a chance to be vulnerable, but it's for yourself. It's not for anyone else. Then once you feel more comfortable with that, you might feel a little bit more comfortable on a date without alcohol.
Totally. And you're also surrounding yourself typically with like-minded people in an environment that isn't focused on alcohol. So whereas you're wondering, like, where will I meet people, or what do I do? Well, why not go to places where people are doing something they love and they're not drinking?
Yes.
Because it's broadening your ability to meet people who, are comfortable doing things that don't involve drinking.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if these new friends or possible dates drink alcohol, because you have something way more important in common. You didn't meet over shots. Like I said, when I first moved to New York, and people would have a glass of wine and sometimes not even finish it, which still blows my mind. I never learned how to do
so
that.
Much. Same.
I'm like, how did you do that? That's amazing. It doesn't matter if they drink, and I mean, that's a whole other conversation. If you choose, if it's triggering for you to be around someone that drinks, that's totally valid as well.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is building connections that are based on authentic interest, as opposed to let's grab a drink.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, let's talk a little bit about, like, I don't know, modern sex ed and where you started to get information, any places that you found helpful in this exploration of, there's the textbook, like the learning, and then there's the doing, like the
Yeah.
literal doing. So we'll get to that in a second. But where are some places that you found helpful to just familiarize yourself with what's available to you and what is, they filling in all the blanks that they didn't teach you in junior high health class,
Mm.
which is a lot of blanks.
Girl, I mean, if you even were taught in
Yeah,
school,
barely.
I mean, if you were taught in school, you were most likely only taught abstinence
Mhm,
based sex
mhm.
ed, if you could even call it that. So I think, I mean, this is again where sexuality comes in. At this stage, I think it's really important that you let yourself Google and do some research. So you know that embracing my bisexuality was a big part of my sobriety journey. So I read books about bisexuality. I followed bisexual people on Instagram. I listened to podcasts, like there's so much information out there for free. Like you
Mhm.
just Google whatever, whatever you want. I
Yeah.
promise there's 100 podcasts about it. So I think that's a really good place to start. And obviously you want reputable people.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of assholes on the internet. We're all aware of that. But finding what you think you are into and just let yourself read about it, like you'd be surprised how many people won't even let themselves read about this thing that's in the back of their head 24/7. So I just encourage people to start there.
Yeah. Well, what's your opinion? This is coming to mind now that, you probably read several educational, nonfiction pieces, which I'd love to know if you have, especially on, just the whole gamut, sexuality and
Yeah.
kink, whatever floats your boat, in terms of education. But I think another really great place to start is just, what are your thoughts, or do you have any, nonfiction kind of, I just lost the word for what I was going for, just kind of like fantasy novels that can kind of just introduce it to you in a more
Oh,
gentle way.
that's a good question. I just read Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. Have you
Okay.
read that?
I haven't, no.
It just came out this summer, I think. It's a novel. It's a pretty quick read, and
Mhm.
it is obviously acts of service. We all know the love languages. But it's about a woman in her late 20s, early 30s who's exploring her sexuality. Um, she gets involved with a polyamorous couple and explores her queerness, explores what it's like to be polyamorous, if she even likes it. And
Mhm.
but it's there's there's definitely some hot sex scenes in this book, but it's more about, this coming of age of like exploring your sexuality. And you don't get to see that a lot through a queer lens. We're seeing more of this now.
Mhm.
But I recommend that book. It's a really quick read. Um yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, erotica
Acts
was
of
the
service.
the genre I was going for. Yeah, I think that those types of books can introduce us to things in a way that is, creative and maybe at least, like, gets your mind going so you can start
Yes.
thinking about things a little more comfortably when you're in this vulnerable state of, "I don't exactly know what I like or what I'm into," or maybe there's things that I'd love to talk about, bisexuality because is that something that you were exploring when you were drinking, and were you using in any way, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but were there times where maybe you used alcohol as a way to give yourself courage in exploration in different ways? Could you tell us about your experience there, and then how you had to
Yeah,
find real courage IRL when you didn't have alcohol in the picture?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I learned about bisexuality that I found to be super validating for me was that bisexuality is not 50-50 attraction. Like I thought it was, as how the media has often presented it.
Mhm.
That's not what it is. It is, for me, it is just being attracted to anybody, regardless of their gender identity. And shows that were very ahead of their time, like Sex and the City and
Mhm.
the L Word. God, they were so mean to us. They were so mean, they called us greedy, they called us confused, they said it was a phase. So now there's bisexual representation on shows like Broad City and The Bold Type and Insecure, where we're seeing real life. Even the new L Word reboot, they do way better with being bisexual and the trans community. I've gone on a tangent and I forgot your original question.
Oh, did you
Please
ever
remind me.
I know that you found your comfort for yourself in bisexuality as a sober woman. Was that something when you were drinking that you remember being curious about? And, or this goes for anything, bisexuality,
Yeah.
kink, anything that's considered edgy or taboo, but in the sex world, and maybe you use alcohol to explore that. Do you ever remember that being like a tool to make yourself vulnerable to these curiosities?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I am very fortunate that I knew that I was attracted to all types of people when I was 14. I saw the Lenny Kravitz music video for Again. It was him and Gina Gershon. And I had, I'm watching TRL after school, probably eating pizza rolls. And I'm like, whoa, they're both hot.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm very fortunate that I have a gay aunt and a gay uncle. So I grew up knowing that that's just another way to be. There's nothing wrong with it. I didn't have any shame about it. My mom has always been a huge advocate for the queer community. So I had a privileged experience in a certain way. But with that privilege, there's something that they call I think it's like passing privilege with bisexuality, where it's like if you're dating, you're seen as the sexuality of the gender of your current partner. So it's like, I'm with Nick, so we can walk around and hold hands, and it's not an issue. It's not a quote issue. People aren't going to be offended by this. I'm not just like wearing a bi flag at all times, but so I didn't, to answer your question, I'm really dancing around it for some reason. I didn't necessarily use alcohol to allow myself to go there because I knew I didn't think that there was anything wrong with the way that I was.
Yeah.
But I also acknowledge that I am a weirdo in that, because most people in the queer community do or did use alcohol or other substances to allow themselves to have the courage to get there. And that is why the LGBT plus community experiences substance use disorder at a vastly larger rate than cis hetero people do.
Totally. I'm really happy that you were able to have that experience, because I think just with, like, as you said, and you've done a ton more research on this than I have, but in terms of anything that is on the edge, I don't even know what that means. But anything that is adventurous sexually, so often, I know that for me, just being vulnerable, just having sex and doing sexy things at some point, because I was a late bloomer, ugly duckling, didn't date in high school, all of my sexual experiences were brought to you by Liquid Courage. So even thank you, sponsor.
That's good.
Yes, but
sponsor.
But those aren't the sponsors that I want. Not anymore, at least. So even, even just wanting something sexually to me was okay. Better have a drink before I express this need or desire or curiosity.
Yeah.
And that was across the board, not even for just, one aspect of sexuality. So, I guess if you have any more to speak to that, but I would love to transition the conversation to, okay, so now, you had 7 years ago, you stopped drinking, you're going to explore sex as a whole, alcohol free. What are some things that you've used to make that experience just feel easier over the years?
Yeah, I think Well, first of all, I just want to say that when you said experiencing sex as a whole, I'm a dirty minded person. So
Which hole were you thinking of,
I went
Tawny?
there. Yeah, I mean, you're interviewing a sex writer, so you got to be
Mhm.
careful.
Oh, I love double entendre and sexual innuendos, so I'll sneak them
Great.
in. Usually I'm the one like winking, like, did you get
Yeah.
it? Did you get it?
I mean, like my book is called Dry Humping, obviously. So
Yes.
I love it. Um so okay, so yeah, I think a big thing for me was expanding what pleasure means to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
So, yes, pleasure means sex. Sure. Yeah, of course. We all know that. And what else brings you pleasure? So, I think that is something that really helped me feel more comfortable in my body, which in turn helped me feel more comfortable when I was with someone else.
Mhm.
So something that a book that I recommend is Ace by Angela Chen.
Mhm.
It is about asexuality.
Mhm.
And I'm not asexual, but I love reading books about sex and learning about all of the things. And um slightly tangential here again, but I recently learned that a lot of people that identify as asexual also admit to using alcohol to try to make themselves like sex, to quote, be
Mm.
normal. And then once they finally come out and embrace their asexuality, they're like, I don't drink. Like I don't need this anymore, you
Yeah.
know? So that was really fascinating to me. So um I wanted to throw that in there because I think it's important for people to understand that pleasure does not have to mean sex.
Yes.
If you are not interested in sex, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're on the asexual spectrum, you're not alone at all. So pleasure can mean a really good meal. Pleasure can
Mhm.
mean a massage. It can mean taking a luxurious bath, you know? So I think giving yourself time to really explore what that word means to you, and then when you feel comfortable bringing someone else into the bedroom, having, maybe having an actual conversation with them, maybe you're showing them, maybe you learn about what pleasure means to them. And, that's something that I think the queer community has is a step ahead of the straight community, because there's so much communication.
Mhm.
There's like,
Mhm.
I'm into this, I'm not into this, I don't want to do that, I'll try that. But, with in the straight community, it's just like, it's so hush hush. It's just like, it seems to always be centered around the male orgasm, and then
Mhm.
sex ends
Mhm.
once the penis climaxes,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Yep.
So I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I think that we this is such a broad conversation. We'll have to come back to this many times.
Yeah.
And oh, there was a comment that I wanted to make. Oh, that there are conscious sex and conscious conversations about sex are becoming so much more accessible. The kink community, the
Yes.
polyamory community, these are all places where these conversations are being had at a higher level. It's not just, penetration as sex. And
Yes.
I think that there are so many places where you can look to for resources and tools and and things that are available that aren't that are just very genuine and high caliber, right? I think that is the word that I'm looking for, that these are really amazing resources to help you understand sex and dating and communication and relationships and your body in a lot of different ways. So I would love to, oh, okay, let's give some tools and resources here, because for people who are squeamish about sex in any sort of way, even going into a sex shop or going online to, um look at porn or to buy a sex toy for themselves, these can be very like overwhelming conversations. So do you have any tips of um where to, even like with self pleasure, where to start? Like, are there places where you recommend like shopping for toys or looking for resources that could be really helpful?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it can be so overwhelming, and
Mm-hmm.
sex toys have changed so much since the rabbit on Sex and the
Oh
City.
yeah.
You know, like you can still buy the rabbit, but there's so many toys and tools. And I use those words specifically because some people are like, oh, we don't need sex toys. I don't need a toy. And I'm like, it's a toy. Like it's
Yeah,
literally
you
just
don't
something to
need
have.
a lot of things in your
Yeah,
life,
like
but it could be more
it's
fun
just a
with them.
fun tool. Like, and there's also tools that make that make penetration easier if you have a shallow vaginal canal, or if your partner is well endowed and sex is painful. There's buffer rings that can make sex more pleasurable for both of you. Like, that's why I say tools, because there are very practical tools that can help you get into certain positions that can make sex more pleasurable. And then there's toys that just like, why not add a vibration to this? You know? And then I think the most important thing to remember is that sex is supposed to be fun. You know, like if Nick and I try something in bed and it's a total flop, we just laugh because it's like you're supposed to have fun and connect. And if it doesn't work out, it's like, oh, LOL, like I guess we're not going to use that toy again. So I think I say all of that to remind people about fun before going into a toy shop or going online.
Yes.
I think you should go into a store. I really do. Like, I know if you don't want to, I totally get it, but I encourage people to go into a store, and I promise whatever question you're going to ask, they've heard like 100 times weirder questions. So if you just go in and you say, I'm brand new, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know where to start, they will like metaphorically give you the biggest hug and like hold your hand and help you, you know? And if you don't feel comfortable doing that at all, just get on some websites and just read about different toys.
Yeah.
You know, just see what interests you.
Is there because I mean, the resources are so broad now.
Yes.
Is there a brand, a manufacturer, or a distributor, like a aggregator, like that you think this place always has like fire toys? I love this place. Or
yes, I am a big fan. There's a brand called Hot Octopus. They're based out of the UK. I like them a lot. They're very high quality toys. For all different types of genital adaptation, let's say. Like there's masturbation toys for people with a penis. There's couples toys that involve multiple, like for both genitals. And also, you know, I'm saying like the edgier stuff, but there's also like they just have really nice, beautiful silicone vibrators and clitoral stimulations. Hot Octopus, Bloomy, Bloomi. They are founded, woman, Latina owned and founded. Really great toys, tools. She's also the founder's a sexologist. There's like some really nice lubes and pleasure oils. I can't recommend lube and pleasure oils enough. There is a shame for some reason women think that like using lube is like if you're not wet enough, there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
Like that's let that shit go.
Like you put lotion on your legs if your legs need it. Like put it where
like
don't put lotion wherever you think, but put the right approved lube where it belongs.
Don't use lotion, please don't use lotion. But there's nothing wrong with, like I said, think of it as a tool. Like it is a tool to help sex be a little bit more pleasurable for you. Like why not bring some oil in? And again, if you don't like it, who cares?
Yeah, you just have to try. It's just it's a learning experience. And our sexual liberation and sexual experience is one place where we have a huge opportunity to grow. And so often we overlook it because it is seen as, you know, shameful or something we should already have figured out, or who knows what reason, or because it's not top priority or productive, or who would spend money on XYZ. But this is a really important part of your life and a part of expressing, in my mind, your full potential in relationships and just in life in general. So I would love to know, Tawny, how your exploration of sex and dating and relationship communication has helped you to express your potential in a bigger way in this world. I mean, aside from the obvious that it's your profession, which is amazing and wonderful.
Can I say one more thing about sex toys before I
Yeah,
answer that?
of course. Yes.
um, Earlier, how I said, allow yourself to expand what pleasure means to you.
Mm-hmm.
I would also encourage people to expand what a sex toy means to
Mm-hmm.
them. It could also just mean, you know, playing with textures.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a feather, you rub a feather on your arm,
Yeah.
or you have your partner gently like rub their nails up your arm,
Mm-hmm.
up your leg, up your thigh, anything like that. Maybe they add a little bit more pressure, like maybe you play with different pressures.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's so many different things you can do, like rub some velvet on your cheek,
Yes.
like does maybe you'll find something like, oh my god, that made my nipples hard, I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea that would turn me on. So like you don't have to go to a sex toy store and buy a vibrator. Like please do, I encourage everyone
Yeah.
to do that, but you don't have to start there.
Right.
You probably have some things around the house that might feel good against your skin. Start there.
Yes. Yeah. And the reason I wanted to ask, specific recommendations for where to go is because just like with anything, all sex toys aren't created equal. If you buy something off of Amazon for $20, sure, you might like it or you might not. And it could just be because you bought a shitty toy, not because you
Yes.
don't like toys. It's just because you were afraid to invest in something that had like good technology in it. And
No, for
but your other
real.
point is that technology could be a piece of velvet, and that's okay too.
It could. And some people prefer clitoral stimulation, some prefer vaginal stimulation, some prefer anal. So it's like there's so many different things out there. Start small, start simple, start with your hands, just try different things with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you do that, you'll feel a little bit more confident. Maybe going into a toy store won't feel as overwhelming because you'll be a little bit more connected with, like, if the sales attendant asks you, well, what do you like? You'll be able to answer.
Yeah, it's about taking little steps to make yourself more comfortable because I'll speak for myself, having conversations about sex when I was first starting to be alcohol free, and talking about what I wanted, that was scary and intimidating. And I didn't quite yet have the language. But as I chose to educate myself, as I chose to
Yes.
figure out, ways to have different conversations, it's become like a no big deal type of thing. And there definitely are things still that feel edgy for me to discuss, but I'm super open to it. But it's all been because I've listened to and had conversations like this with people like you, even when it felt like, oh, that's edgy. And I've allowed myself to step deeper and deeper into it. And that's how you learn to get comfortable with something. It's
Yeah.
exposing yourself to it. And then educating yourself a little bit more, trying, testing, just dipping your toe in the pond over and over and over again. And it's not going to happen overnight that you rip off this band-aid and all of a sudden you are a sexual goddess. If you're listening, or God, you're listening to this right now, you are just innately,
You are.
and you have to uncover that. You have to reveal it. And so doing little activities and learning little by little is a great way to do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. I had to squeeze that in. So thank you for giving me. If you could ask the other
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
again,
Let me
because
ask
I
the question
forgot.
again. So, aside from the fact that your career is so deeply, revolving around sex and sobriety, what is another way that exploring sex, sexuality, and everything that goes with it has helped you step into and express your full potential?
I love that question. So basically, how has getting sober and getting more connected with my sexuality helped me in other areas of my life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think getting sober is like the umbrella for
Mm-hmm.
everything else happened underneath that. Like
Yeah.
if I didn't, or you could even say moving to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Moving to New York, leaving my hometown, starting over, that worked for me. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work for everyone. It could be, I don't recommend like just moving, like you said, and everything will get better. I'm a rare case that it did. I had to leave. So once I quit drinking, I really met myself. For one, I got the mental health diagnosis that I needed. I got an anxiety diagnosis. I found a great therapist. I got on Lexapro. I learned how to take care of myself. These sound really basic, but most people don't do these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just looking for the Band-Aid, which I did for a very long time too. Like I wasn't self-aware enough to be like, oh, I'm feeling anxious about this date, I'm going to take a shot. I didn't have any language for that.
Yeah.
I just knew I don't like this feeling. How can I make it go away? And alcohol was the closest and quickest thing there. So I think really pulling back and taking care of my mental health paved the way for everything else to fall into place. I met Nick. He's also sober. I would have never met him without that. I'm that day that I was in the pub talking about how I need to write, alcohol was the hurdle, and I moved it out of the way. And now I'm a professional author and writer. So, I 100% thank sobriety for that. I would even say I don't think I would have gotten really connected to my sexuality if I didn't stop drinking. I think the sobriety is the most important, is the key. It's the key there for me. And for me, I needed to give up alcohol completely. Some people maybe just need to do a dry month or a dry year or something, but for me, I had to get rid of it altogether. And I'm like pretty much perfect now. So
yeah, exactly. I know that about you. I love this. I love this conversation because it's so important. And like, as I said, I'm sure this will be one of many times you will be on this show because we can go down so many other rabbit holes in terms of sex and dating and sexuality. And if anyone has any, I know that we will have tons of questions. So feel free to send them my way, but also feel free to send them to Tawny. So Tawny, how can we reach you? Tell us what you're up to and how we can hang out with you outside of this little container.
Yes. I'm on all of the social medias at Tawny M Lara, M as for Michelle, my middle name, Tawny M Lara. On TikTok, Instagram, all of the things. And my book comes out fall of 23. It's called Dry Humping. You should hopefully be able to pre-order soon. But yeah, just stay tuned. And I co-host a podcast called Recovery Rocks, where my co-host Lisa Smith and I talk about recovery and rock and roll.
Yes. And Lisa is such a fun lady as well. So definitely check out the pod if you haven't already, and connect with Tawny, and we will have you back on when your book is on pre-sale, if not before.
Yes. And you will be on mine.
Yes.
And we will just be obsessed with each other.
We already are. Thank you all for listening to our mutual obsession. And with that, we will say goodbye.